Humankind as a species likes to think that we have anything and everything figured out. However, our world is filled with mysteries that come in abundance. One of the most endearing ones is a book in which no one, not even its discoverer, can read. Now, the written word is often regarded as one of mankind's most seminal accomplishments, but as we'll soon see, it can also be a source of the uncanny and a breeding ground for the unknown. This is the enigma of the Voynich Manuscript.
Born in 1865, the early life of Wilfrid Michael Voynich was a far cry from what his legacy would suggest. Wilfrid was a counter-revolutionary who were staunch opponents of the Russian Empire. At only the age of 20, he was arrested and thrown into a gulag named the Warsaw Citadel. 5 years later, he was released. But after his harrowing experience, the young Wilfrid sought a much quieter existence and turned his focus into acquiring rare literary antiquities in the form of ancient books, tomes, scrolls, and parchments from around every corner of the globe and every known and unknown civilization. By the year 1912, he had amassed a sizable collection of rare works from Roman, Aztec, Mayan, Toltec, and Egyptian backgrounds. He had grown wealthy and operated several libraries and book dealerships all around London. During a trip to Italy, Wilfrid visited the mysterious Jesuit college at Frascati. Making a deal with the Jesuit council, Wilfrid purchased several old trunks full of scholarly works spanning several hundred years. In one of the trunks, he discovers an old book, quite indistinct from any of the others. Its cover was nothing special, and there was nothing to suggest of the oddities that lay inside. Inside the book was an apothecary manuscript full of drawings, illustrations, and diagrams of what can only be described as botanical and astrological cryptography. But the most startling detail is the puzzling script that the book is written in. The language and alphabet is of unknown origin and doesn't resemble anything Wilfrid had ever seen before. Shortly after acquiring the book, Wilfrid feverishly pores over his collection of antiquated tomes, but doesn't come close to finding a comparable alphabet, contemporary or otherwise, that matches the mysterious alphabet written in the mysterious manuscript. Wilfrid Voynich will spend the next 18 years of his life on an obsessive quest to deciphering the unknown text, which takes him to every far corner of the world and nearly draining his entire fortune in search of answers. Sadly, in the winter of 1930, Wilfrid Voynich passes away in New York City, his mission going unfulfilled. Several years after Voynich's death, the manuscript is then bought by the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library within Yale University. The Voynich Manuscript has become the library's most famous attraction. The manuscript is kept under very heavy guard and contains about 200 pages with nearly 170,000 characters within its bindings. When inspecting the book, scholars seem to come to the consensus that most of it acts as a botanical guide to several different species of plant. Intricate illustrations run throughout its pages, detailing the finer points of root systems and foliage. Many of the drawings even seem to be of real-world plants. Near to the back of a book is a compilation of complex zodiac-like symbols and what appear to be star charts, denoting heavenly constellations of some kind. Most astoundingly, however, is that the manuscript contains a series of what can only be described as primitive animation cells, meaning that if the images were put through a split-second motion simulator, they would come to life in a variety of ways. By studying the book, many investigators have come to the conclusion that the Voynich Manuscript was written sometime during the infamous Spanish Inquisition, and the mysterious text was deliberately encoded to hide its secrets from the Catholic Church. New discoveries at the time were often seen as heretical teachings by the church officials, and if caught, its practitioners were often put to death under suspicion of witchcraft. Going through Wilfrid's extensive notes from his 18-year inquest, investigators find a curious discovery he himself made around the year 1915. While developing detailed photographs he had taken, Wilfrid discovers a mysterious signature in the first few pages. Written in scratched-out ink is the name of Jakob Zetepenisch, who was a traveling doctor and botanical expert who lived during the 1600s. Now in 1608, he is famously summoned to Prague by Emperor Rudolf II. Hoping to cure the monarch's rampant depression, Rudolf's aides commission Jakob to find a remedy. The doctor is known far and wide for his miraculous herbal tonics and potions and succeeds in bringing Rudolf back to a state of normalcy. In gratitude, Rudolf promotes him to chief royal distiller, a position that earned Jakob immense wealth and status. It is theorized that in addition to being an herbal doctor, Jakob Zetepenisch was also an underground alchemist and might have encoded several of his recipes to keep them from falling into the hands of his rivals. But this theory has been refuted, as Jakob Zetepenisch was known to be a very meticulous and straightforward practitioner of herbals. Hundreds of his other works have been catalogued, and none bear even the slightest resemblance to that of the Voynich Manuscript. Not to mention that the book was clearly written during a much earlier period than the 17th century. So while the manuscript was most certainly in the good doctor's possession at some point, he was in all likelihood not its author. Interestingly enough, through antiquated letters sent from Rudolf's court, it is learned that it was Rudolf himself who had acquired the manuscript somewhere near the Mediterranean and had left it with Jakob after his death. Another intriguing hint that comes from the letter of Rudolf II's court is the name of Roger Bacon. Bacon was a famous scientist and rumored alchemist that served with the clergy during the 13th century. Bacon also had a telling nickname during his tenure, namely that of the Miracle Doctor. Bacon's practices often led him into harrowing conflicts with his fellow clergy, some that even had him imprisoned on numerous occasions. One of Bacon's pioneering interests was the field of optical magnification. Now, interestingly enough, there are several illustrations within the Voynich Manuscript that resemble microscopic objects under telescopic magnification. Exploring this theory further finds that Bacon had a rather large following, and it is postulated that it was one of his students that it might have been the one to actually write the manuscript. In the time of the 13th and 14th centuries, there was a boom, as in modern times, when it came to interest in the ancient past. Bacon was known for his intense interest in ancient civilizations, something he passed down to his students. Markets for antiquities were a lucrative business back then, as it is now. Perhaps the manuscript was produced as a purely fictitious ornament, meant to be sold to a gullible collector who would prize owning a book from an unknown ancient society.
When further scrutinizing the book, an intriguing detail is uncovered. Throughout the entirety of its over 200 pages, not a single error or abrasion could be observed. In the writing of almost 200,000 individual characters, its author hadn't made a single mistake in its creation, an almost superhuman feat in and of itself. In the minds of many, this detail severely damaged the manuscript's credibility, and some even began pointing fingers at Wilfrid Voynich himself. However, in several detailed sessions, several small samples of inks and paint used in the construction of the manuscript are analyzed and seem to rule out the fact that the book could have been produced sometime in the 20th century. The methodology and materials used are consistent with the medieval and Renaissance periods. It seems Wilfrid Voynich had been exonerated. Furthermore, why would a man travel to the ends of the earth and blow through nearly his entire fortune on something he created himself? Another fantastic theory is that the manuscript was produced by none other than Leonardo da Vinci. Some experts contend that the Voynich manuscript was some of da Vinci's earliest works. Yet this theory meets fierce resistance on its own. In studying the manuscript, experts are sure that during the time it was thought to have been produced, the pigments, ink, and particularly the parchment, were enormously expensive to procure. Furthermore, the book's intricacies are thought to have taken years to complete, something wholly inconsistent with a young Leonardo da Vinci.
One final theory is the one that many researchers think is the most likely origin for the Voynich manuscript. Edward Kelly was a mystic and alchemist that lived during the Elizabethan period, and the man that many are sure is the manuscript's author. The theory goes that Kelly created the tome as a book of pure nonsensical fantasy as a means to sell it to none other than Rudolph II. Rudolph was known far and wide to be a student of the arcane and employed several herbalists, soothsayers, and alchemists in his court. Kelly's motivation was simply that of greed. Kelly would later become embroiled in a dark scandal that involved his fellow mystic, John Dee. The two embarked on a frightening quest that would take them into the very depths of the occult when they started to decipher the language of the angels, as they called it. The experiment would see Kelly and Dee converse with otherworldly entities that would supposedly drive them both mad.
Will we ever know the truth behind this most fascinating of mysteries? Does the Voynich manuscript contain some hidden knowledge or some arcane secrets? Is it the product of a Renaissance period hoaxer? Or is it perhaps something else entirely? But there is a message contained within the manuscript that probably doesn't even need to be deciphered. It's on the very first page and doesn't need a special cipher to read. It simply tells us to question everything and trust no one. Until next time.